Let's move on. Oh my goodness, Al. This one, man, it's a heartbreaker for both of us. Jan Blachowicz, it's got to be that damn hangman's noose bracelet. This guy has captured magic. Jan Blachowicz, a man who started his UFC run at 2-4 against less than stellar competition, goes in here and beats Israel Adesanya. Okay, now I got to be honest, Al. These scorecards are a little bit funky to me. To say Jan Blachowicz won 4-1, I don't know if I'm seeing that. For my money, I think it was a little bit closer fight. I think Jan Blachowicz probably did win those last 2 rounds convincingly with the takedowns, because that's truly the story of this fight. I talk about it every time Israel Adesanya fights, and I always have this caveat, right? We may see something if someone actually goes in here and attempts and succeeds to take Israel Adesanya down. Jan Blachowicz at the halfway mark of the 4th round of this championship fight says to himself, you know what? Standing with this guy's not going really well. I'm going to try to take this guy down. And you know what? He succeeds. He shows us Israel Adesanya doesn't have great takedown defense. But I'll tell you what he really doesn't have: a get-up game or an ability, honestly, to transition anywhere off of his back. When Adesanya got put on his back, he was absolutely exposed as far as this situation goes in this sport, in my mind, in my eyes, from my opinion, watching a lot of fights. Now, don't get me wrong. Jan Blachowicz is a black belt, okay? But at no point did Israel Adesanya even attempt to transition, even attempt to post up, even attempt to get to the cage, or even attempt to get to his feet. He absolutely accepted position, while Jan Blachowicz, who honestly didn't get off a whole lot of offense until very, very late in the fight. But Jan Blachowicz slowly and surely transitioned from position to position, slowly worked his way to a more dominant position. And we saw in the 5th round, he finished off the last 10 seconds of this fight, full mount, raining down ground and pound. I gotta tip the cap. I gotta give props to the people who backed Jan Blachowicz in this spot. I did not. I had Adesanya. I thought he was going to go out there, keep the fight standing, be the sharper man on the feet. And I think a lot of times he was the sharper man on the feet. But the story of the fight was the takedowns, the execution, the good fight IQ of Jan Blachowicz. Like I said, I think the fight was closer. I think a 48-47 Jan Blachowicz makes more sense.
Yeah.
But I'll be honest, man. I went and looked at the media scores because I wanted to see if there were people who scored this fight for Israel Adesanya, because I think Adesanya, there's an argument he may have snuck out the first 3 rounds, but I feel like he absolutely lost the last 2. And to end the fight in full mount, eating ground and pound, how can you give a guy a belt finishing a fight like that, right? But I looked at the media scores. 18 media members scored it 48-47 Jan Blachowicz. I think that's fine. 1 media member scores at 49-46 Jan Blachowicz. But these judges we had from the score tonight, these judges scored that fight at least 49-46. A couple of them even more beyond that on the Jan Blachowicz side. 7 media members actually scored this fight. Israel Adesanya, 48-47. Al, hit me with it, man. Did you have anything on this fight? What do you think?
Yes, I had the over 2.5 in this fight, which I felt very confident with and cashed. And then I also had a large bet on Israel Adesanya. And, you know, it didn't matter because leading up to the ending, I was up like 9 units on the night. So it is what it is. You know, I probably stuck my neck out a little bit too much on Adesanya. But I'll say this. The first 3 rounds of that fight, Israel was winning, no doubt. He even caught him with that counter hook to the temple that rocked Jan. And I think that's what woke Jan up, and that's what made him implement the takedown game. But I will say this, though. 10-8 rounds, when a guy takes a guy down at the halfway point of the round, is absolutely freaking ridiculous. A 10-8 round is not that, okay? A 10-8 round is like Oliveira Ferguson, right? That's a 10-8 round. The second round of Oliveira Ferguson. That's a 10-8 round. A 10-8 round is when you dominate the entire round. The first half of the fifth round, Adesanya was winning. So what? Sal Diamano is not a freaking MMA judge, okay? He is a boxing judge. He has judged Floyd Mayweather fights. He does not know what he's looking at, okay? And with all due respect, and I'm not taking anything away from Jan Blachowicz, I think he's awesome. I think that, and I said it like 2 weeks ago. I said if he wins, he solidifies himself as one of the best in light heavyweight, right? But also, I had it.
Yeah, what'd you score this fight, Al?
So I had it 3-2 Adesanya because I give the last 2 rounds to Blachowicz, but I give the first 3 to Adesanya. And like, I'm not saying it's a robbery. I tweeted out that I had it 48-47, and if it happened the other way, I wouldn't be. It is what it is. But when they read off 49-45, like, that's absolutely ridiculous. That there's a problem, and like, people who know me and follow me know that I've never seen eye to eye with Dana White, and he said it too in the post-fight press conference. This is a joke. How do you give a 10-8 round to a guy who had, he was on top for half the round? That's only half of the round. That's 10-9, And
yeah, I mean, and don't get me wrong, he's in the dominant position, but it's not like he really executed a lot of offense, and he really, inflicted almost zero damage. I mean, honestly, Jan didn't have really strong moments on the ground until that last full mount flurry to end the fight, So I understand position matters, but I'll say this. I have absolutely no problem with Jan Blachowicz winning the fight.
No.
I think he fought a fairly smart fight. I think that wasn't necessarily the best Israel Adesanya we've ever seen. But it was the strategy. It was the takedowns of Jan Blachowicz that won him this fight. I think Adesanya would have had a legit chance to win had the fight stayed standing, but it didn't. Jan did what he needed to do. Great strategy, great fight IQ, and we now see the shortcomings in Israel Adesanya. And it's been shocking that no one really has taken him to that realm up to this point. But you've got to think, man, the blueprint's out there on how you beat this guy. And, we really need to look out for it. I'll say this, man, Jan Blachowicz, this guy just continues to impress. Who's next for Jan Blachowicz? What is his next matchup? I think you got to go Glover Teixeira, the old man that weighed in for this fight as backup. I think it's pretty clear cut now. Glover Teixeira is up next. And I tell you what, man, that's an interesting matchup for sure. What do you think of that one, Al?
Yeah, I love it. And I think that's a great matchup. We probably won't see that until September. I think that's a great matchup. And then something that I was dying to talk about earlier, and it just slipped my mind, was there's a young man by the name of Yuri Prochazka, who I think will be a serious problem in the 205-pound division. I feel like he's, Alexander Rakic looked okay tonight. Mm-hmm. I feel like Yuri Prochazka would destroy Alexander Rakic.
Wow.
So I think that Rakic and whoever wins, Rakic has to fight Dominic Reyes, and I'll be all over. Prochazka is fighting Dominic Reyes, and I'll be all over Prochazka in that fight. And I feel like if he wins that, he needs to get the winner of Jan and Glover, which will probably end up being in like December or maybe even next year. But I'm seeing people in the chat saying that Jan outlanded Israel, and those numbers that you're seeing on the screen are unofficial. Go back, and because this has happened many times, go back and look at the replay, slow it down half. Half those punches that you think Jan are landing are not landing. Israel is slipping almost all of those punches. It's the same thing with Connor and Dustin. Israel has this way of rolling with so many of those shots that it looks like they're landing, but they're not landing. They're not landing flush. And, if you want to award guys for throwing punches and not landing them, cool, but that's not what happened. And Israel Adesanya won the first 3 rounds of this fight. And I would, you could probably maybe give the 3rd round if you were blind to Blachowicz. But besides that, it's unquestionable that Blachowicz won the last 2 rounds. My only issue is the 10-8. And I understand that based on the new rules or the new criteria that, the judges follow the criteria, which is fine. I think the criteria is wrong. If you have, top control over somebody for half a round, it should not be a 10-8 round. And but it is what it is. And Jan Blachowicz is the and it's funny because I said straight up, I do not think that Blachowicz will win a decision. And I was dead wrong. And looking back, I realized, Blachowicz at 12-1 to win by decision was actually some value. And Blachowicz,
absolutely.
He's won 6 of his 16 fights by decision. If you've bet on Blachowicz to win by decision in every single fight in his UFC career, you're up $1,800 bet would return $1,800 going 6-10. So this guy not only has he been an underdog darling, but he wins by decision in these fights that he's not supposed to. And you're going back further into his career, but yeah, man, it was it was disappointing, but I said this a bunch of times too. It's one of those things where in this sport, if you really love the sport, when you lose a bet that you make, you more or less, that apart from getting your bet, losing your bet because of an illegal knee, more or less you get to learn something, right? And we learned something, and Adesanya doesn't have a terrible ground game at middleweight, but he's got a terrible ground game at light heavyweight. He had no answer whatsoever to Blachowicz, and that was the difference. It was the size on the ground, and I think that Adesanya just truly underestimated Jan Blachowicz. I underestimated Jan Blachowicz, and the fact that he was able to not fall down when Adesanya landed that signature left hook to the temple that he dropped Whitaker with, that he dropped Costa with, that's when I knew, like, shit, he's in trouble. This is not good. And that's when I was like, this is likely gonna end with either Jan submitting him or this ending by decision, because after watching 5 rounds of that fight, I can't envision Adesanya at that size being able to knock out Blachowicz in that fight. And I don't think that there was anything spectacular that Israel would have been able to do to knock him out. What do you think?
Yeah, hey, listen, man. I just think it was a close fight, and I think the right man won. I have no problem with Jan Blachowicz winning. I think it was a very close fight. I feel like Israel did have a lot of success on the feet, but significant strikes leading Jan Blachowicz. I feel like the first 3 rounds were really, really close. Another spot where, man, it seemed like we really had some biased commentary. I think they kind of thought Israel was going to pull away with this one. Jan Blachowicz, twists the fight around with the takedowns, gets the win. So.